Open differentials, when you're going, your suspension's moving around a lot. When you get more weight off one wheel, that's the wheel that tends to, all the power goes to, so you get no traction. You can't move forward a lot of times. So, and like I have a limited slip in the back, but it doesn't always stay. It's not like an all-time locker, but it's a lot better than just an open differential. It sends some power to both wheels majority of the time.
The first thing we noticed out there was a simple lack of traction. It was all over the place. There was a lot of that going on. And fortunately, that's an easy thing to fix because you can just throw a locker in the differential. The majority of four-wheel drive vehicles come from the factory with an open differential, which means, the power's coming in from the drive shaft, shooting out to the axles and spinning them. Well, if this tire gets bogged down in something and is not going to spin anymore, this one's just going to spin freely. Well, sure, you're most likely not going to break an axle, but you're also stuck as well.
Right, we can give you guys an example here. Matt, if you hold on to the lugs on that side, I'll turn it. So what happens is, Matt's the side where it's stuck, and what you do is you put the throttle down, and this side starts spinning, right? It's going round and round, and it's driving. That side's not driving. You can see that gear standing still when I spin this. So the fix is we're gonna put in the Untitled Max from Auburn Gear, and now when you flip the switch, you put power to the locker, you're driving both sides of this thing and you can get over the obstacles, you can get down the road, you flip it off and you're back to an open differential and you can corner and do all the things you need to do for everyday driving.
So we got the diff cover off and we're starting to get into the meat of this, and you see these bearing caps right here. And these are engineered to go on a specific way, right to left and top to bottom. So when you're taking this apart, you want to make sure that you put them back the right way. So an easy way here is this one's marked. It's got a little W right there, and the W is facing that way, right? So there's your W on the bearing cap, and that's facing the same way too. So you can match those up, that way you don't screw it up. You go over here to this side, you got a W looking up, and there is a W in there. It's a little bit hard to see on that one, but it is there and it's going up. That way you put everything back together the right way.
Yeah, there's a reason for that, because this is line honed to go in that certain direction. So if you've flipped the cap around or you flip the orientation from left to right, you could have a problem. You can have a bearing seize up prematurely. So make sure you stamp them if they're not stamped already so they go back in the right place.
All right, let's get these axles out of here.
All right.
Our stock differential is out, and we're getting ready to install our new one that we got from Auburn Gear. It's the Untitled Max, and this is the fully locking differential right there. Now, what's nice about this is it's going to help you get to places that you could never go before, right? But there's a lot going on because differentials themselves can be very, very complicated, but the concept of them isn't all that bad. We've got one here. This is new, this is complete, and all the gears are in there, and you can see. Over here are all the parts that cram in there. It's fun to kind of take it apart and take a look at how it all works every now and then, right? Basically, you're inside the cab, you hit the switch, you turn on the electricity, and that activates the electromagnet that compresses everything that we've got right here. Now, there's a lot going on at this particular time. You've got these bearings riding on these little ramps. Those ramps are 15 1/1000ths of an inch. That's the difference between being locked in and not. So when these ride up because of the compression right there, they actually will engage this ring gear on the back side, and they'll push this gear out, which is actually sitting right here. So now all this energy is going that direction.
Now with the energy going to the side here, what it's doing is engaging your other axle, and the way it works is it's pushing over, engaging this axle and all these clutch packs right here, as you can see the way it is when it's all put together. So then you've got your full locking differential. What's nice about the Untitled system is the fact that it's two differentials in one, essentially. Right. A full locking differential as well as a limited slip. And this was kind of the 10-cent tour of how the whole thing works. Really, for 99% of us, all we really care about is you can turn it on, you lock it up, and you watch it go. That's the 2-cent tour.
Welcome back to TruckU. So the first trip out to the park, and we noticed that lack of traction was a big issue. A lot of guys were having it. Fortunately, that's an easy one to fix, and we don't want this truck to have that issue either. So what we're going to do is install the locking differential. This will help you go a lot of places that you could never go before. We did one in the rear. We got one up here in the front. This thing's going to be able to go all over the place. Now the system that we use is right here. It's the Untitled Max from Auburn Gear. It's a nice system. It's going in nice and smooth. But before we actually button everything back up, while we've got it all apart, we want to take a look at one more thing. Now, we're not changing out gears or changing gear ratios. We're just swapping out the carrier right there, but it's a great time to check our wear pattern. And I'm talking about where the ring and pinion gears meet, okay? So we put on a little compound right here, and we can spin the axle around, and that'll show us where the gears are meeting up. And we want to make sure that it's not too far on one side or the other. You want it right there in the meat of the gears. Otherwise, you can get some chatter, you can get a little bit of noise, you can wear the gears out prematurely, and we don't want to have that issue. So we check that out. This system looks good. Another thing to keep in mind is when you go in with this particular one, like the ECTED Max, you want to use a non-synthetic gear oil. You've got to use that for this particular system, and you want to use the limited slip additive. Fortunately, when you buy this, that's all part of the deal.
This vehicle here doesn't flex as good. We build a lot of them. This one was built years ago. I drive it on the street every day. It's very important to have a vehicle that's very flexible when you're doing this kind of stuff. And this may or may not make it up this mound of rocks, but generally it does all right for me. And I took the leaf springs off this originally when they came out and started making the coil spring conversions about 6 or 7 years ago, and I couldn't really afford it, so I custom built the coil springs and all just so it would flex better. Now they've come a long way with leaf spring kits and everything else, but I've been real happy with the coil spring setup. Want to hook this up yet? The biggest thing is that I usually quit whenever it gets bad, and I just throw the winch out because I really don't have nothing to prove to a whole lot of people. I just trying to have some fun. This is why it's important to have one that's more flexible than this one.